Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Starlin D'Angelo. I'm the relatively new director here at the Hart Cluett Museum, and it's my pleasure to host this event this evening. So we're just giving a few more minutes to let folks log in to the event, and then we will have 16 people talking about our wonderful Stacy Draper this evening. And it should be a fun and lively event. So I'm really looking forward to it. So we'll just give it like maybe one more minute.
So where's Stacy? Is she there someplace?
Right. So those folks who are speaking, you should have the list of the order of speakers, and I'll just ask you to unmute yourself before you speak. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I was trying to think of the first time I met Stacy Draper, and I think it was when I was a student at the Cooperstown Graduate Program, and we came on a field trip here. And I remember looking at her with awe because the whole concept, the idea of being a curator just seemed so amazing to me. And that serving in that role is just such a fabulous thing. And so it's so gratifying to be here now at the end of her career. And, you know, as she departed on her last day, I thought about how people devote their lives to this work of preserving our heritage and how important and wonderful it is that we have somebody like Stacy who has done that, who has spent hundreds and hundreds of countless hours collecting information, collecting artifacts, researching, doing all different types of things here at the museum to keep the organization moving forward. And we are so incredibly fortunate to have had her for these 43 years. But at this point, it's time to hand off the torch. And so we're going to have our first speaker of the evening. You can turn your attention to Sam Mahosky, who's going to be our first guest speaker this evening.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Samantha Mahosky.
I think you're muted.
Am I?
Oh.
Not muted.
Nope.
Not muted? Okay, so I'm going to keep going.
Keep going.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sam Mahosky, and for about the last 5 years, I have been Stacy Pomeroy Draper's curatorial assistant. And what a wild ride that has been, I think, for both of us. As much as Stacy always said that I was her right-hand woman, she was just as much mine, always there to answer questions, provide guidance and support, and point me in the right direction, whether I realized I needed a little push or not. When I first met Stacy, I was still just a volunteer, so my interactions with her were limited. But I knew immediately that she meant business and that I always had to be on my best behavior around her. And still, to this day, I avoid at all costs getting in trouble with Stacy. But for tonight, I wanted to share a few of my favorite Stacyisms. I think those that know Stacy can attest to the fact that she always has the perfect saying for every occasion. Because I've had the honor of sharing an office with her for the last 5 years, I've been able to quite literally collect some of my favorites. I have just a little sticky notes filled with little things that Stacy has said over the years. So I'm going to just share a couple of my favorites that I think will be good for tonight. So this one, well, wonders never cease, dated 5/20/21. I believe in small victories. There's nothing new under the sun, you know. There's always tomorrow. Well, not always, but usually there's tomorrow. Life is flexibility. Never assume. Nothing is forever either way. And one of my favorites is don't wish your time away. So Stacy, thank you for everything, for being such a guiding force. I really have no idea what I'm going to do without you now. But with what you've given me, I know that you'll be with me forever and wherever I go. So congrats on your retirement, Miss Stacy, a well-deserved accomplishment. And I hope retirement blesses you with the world's endless amount of chocolate. You deserve it. So thank you. And next on the list of speakers is John Shearer. So I'm happy to introduce him.
Thank you. So I was curator at the New York State Museum for many years, and Stacy and I go way back. I remember when she started there at the Historical Society. In fact, I was already working at the New York State Museum when she first came to the Historical Society, fresh out of the Cooperstown graduate program in museum training. It was some 43 years ago, hard to believe. I was in the class of 1967, and Stacy was the class of 1977. So now you know how old I am. Through the years, we collaborated on a number of exhibits and programs. She would borrow items from the State Museum for exhibits, and the State Museum would borrow items from the Historical Society. Both of us have a very keen interest in decorative arts, and we conferred with each other when questions arose regarding various artifacts in our charge. I really enjoyed the discussions that we had, and Stacy's expertise is invaluable. Mostly, I welcomed Stacy's input during some dozen years that I taught a graduate course in material culture at the State University at Albany. My class would make its annual field trip to the Hart Cluett House to study the 19th century architecture and furnishings. Stacy would host these sessions and would always know exactly what to say to stimulate the class and begin a discussion involving the meaning of artifacts and what they say about those who lived with them. And I really appreciated those thoughts, and I'm sure the class did as well. I'm happy to say, actually, that I had a circumstantial role in Stacy being hired at the Historical Society. The director at the time was Breffney Walsh, who I had met years before in 1967. Her husband, Fred, and her son, Fred Jr., were fellow fifers, partners in a reactivated unit of the Brigade of the American Revolution. For several years, our unit met once a week at Fred and Breffney's home in Delmar to learn and practice our fife playing. Breffney would quiz me about my job at the New York State Museum and what kind of a background was needed to work in a museum. I encouraged her to check out the Cooperstown graduate program, and the rest is history. Some 7 years after Breffney arrived at the Rensselaer County Historical Society, a curatorial position at the New York State Museum became available, and we hired Historical Society curator Ruth Ann Broad, making the curator position at the Historical Society available for Breffney to hire Stacy. Congratulations, Stacy, on your long career and achievements at the Historical Society and on your retirement, and enjoy this time to pursue your many special interests. And I guess, am I supposed to introduce the next person? Because I don't know who that is.
It's me. I'm right
Oh,
here.
Chris, it's Chris
Hi,
Kelly.
John.
Chris Kelly. Hi,
Well,
Chris.
hi. Well, I'm sorry to begin by saying that the curator who was hired after Ruth Ann Broad was me. And I worked for a couple of years. And
Mea
then,
culpa.
it was a long time ago. And then there was one more curator for a very brief time before Stacy. But I'm sure that Breffney was well aware of Stacy, thanks to you. I want to talk about Stacy from 2 points of view. I guess you would say historical or global, and modern or personal. First, historical and global. I'm another Cooperstown graduate person, and there are several other faces that I see who are as well. And that program originally was designed to prepare students to be the sole employee of a small historical society. Theoretically, we were prepared to handle just about anything and everything at a museum. Stacy has done that, but in a superlative way. I tried to make a list of all the variety of tasks she has done over the past 40 plus years, but I think it's impossible. I want to add that for the last 25 years or so, she has had Kathy as a partner for many of these endeavors, and off and on, of course, other coworkers. So I don't want to diminish their contributions, but this is about Stacy tonight. To begin with, she came to Hart Cluett as it doubled in size and participated in that whole process, and then she filled up the new building with collections. She has been curator of all types of collections, including 59 2nd Street, librarian and archivist of an increasingly enormous collection, researcher and author of many types of publications, exhibit creator from idea to script to research to fabrication and installation, author of and guide for all types of tours, receiver of donations to the collection, which then had to be cataloged, researched, and stored. Sometimes the relationships with the donors would go on to be long-lasting friendships. Stacy has attended many, many funerals. She was also acting director a couple of times. She was supervisor of many, 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 many interns and volunteers and their projects. She was the designer and supervisor of the storage of collections. She was a liaison working year-round with the Rensselaer Garden Club on the Green Show. And she worked to cooperate with colleagues like John and others in the field. She also was the cleaner and the sidewalk sweeper. I could go on, but you get the idea. Second, I have been not just a board member, but a library volunteer for about the last 10 years, along with my late husband, who was a general handyman 1 day a week. So Stacy was also our supervisor. My husband, John, always looked forward to his weekly lists of tasks from Stacy, from the mundane to the challenging, and he appreciated her hard work and her creativity in solving storage and exhibit issues. We library volunteers received weekly assignments of incoming research requests from Stacy, fitted to our particular strengths. I focus on genealogy, and I know Stacy really wanted to do all those requests herself, but she would get all the information she could out of the correspondence and then turn it over. She was also always very patient with us volunteers and generous with her advice and praise. I wish her a very long and happy retirement doing exactly everything that she wants to do. And I'm done. And I don't know who's after me. I didn't pay attention.
I think it's supposed to be me. I'm Michael Halloran, and I'm going to read my remarks because I'm not very good at shutting up, and I don't want to run on and take up too much time. Several years ago, when my wife Mary was somewhere in the mild to moderate stages of Alzheimer's, Stacy and Kathy came up with a volunteer project for Mary to work on together with her friend Ellie Buckley. The job was part of the curatorial process, and I'm quite sure that having Mary and Ellie do it was far from the most efficient way of getting it done. In fact, I strongly suspect that Stacy could have done the job herself in less time than it took for her to set up and oversee Mary and Ellie's weekly sessions. My point here is that while Stacy did the job of caring for the museum's collection so very, very well, she also cared for as much for the people who make up the organization. Those weekly sessions with Ellie Buckley compensated some for all the day-to-day tasks Mary was losing the ability to keep up with. making an apple pie, balancing her checking account, all the little things that give all of us a sense of purpose and independence on a very day-to-day basis. Stacy understood that, and it was her inherent kindness that moved her to create those weekly sessions so Mary could be doing something purposeful in the company of a good friend. I'm, of course, personally grateful, but I think we must all feel very grateful to Stacy, not only for the great professionalism she brought to her work at the museum, but for her great sensitivity and kindness as well, for the human warmth that she brought to the museum. Thank you, and I don't know who follows me either.
Oh, I think it's me. I'm Diana Waite, and I'm president of Mount Ida Press and a former president of the Board of Trustees of the Historical Society, and I'm a resident of downtown Troy. I think Starr asked us to keep in mind some sort of humorous anecdotes or stories about Stacy. And I tried really hard, but I didn't come up with something that was funny, but I certainly came up with many instances of where it was fun to work with Stacy. And I just wanted to mention one of those, which really proved to be a huge amount of fun. And that was when I was creating the book on the architecture of downtown Troy. And Doug Booker, Kathy Sheehan, Stacy, and I took on the task of identifying photographs from the Historical Society's collections to include in the book. So we had these regular early morning meetings, and Kathy would roll in her cart of historic photos, and we must have sorted through, I mean, we did certainly sort through hundreds and hundreds of prints and negatives. And so we really welcomed Stacy's vast knowledge of the collections and of Troy. And she steered us in the right direction in many cases. And sometimes she had to sort of rein us in as we got off track. So I thank you, Stacy, for all your good work and enthusiasm, and we couldn't have gotten through that big job without you. I thank you also for your support of historic preservation projects beyond the walls of the museum. And I also thank you for your steady hand and ideas when I was president of the board of trustees in the mid-1990s. And Ann Ackerson, who I believe is going to speak next, at that time, just as I was leaving that post, handed in her resignation. So I really thank you, Stacy, for your help with that transition. The memories of the four of us, though, of Doug, Kathy, Stacy, and myself, sorting through all those photographs remain very vivid. They aren't, you know, especially funny, but that process was, in fact, a great deal of fun, I think, for all of us. And I hope, Stacy, sometime that we can work on another project together. So I think Anne is the next one up.
I am. Thank you, Diana. And hi, everybody. It's nice to see so many familiar faces tonight. I'm Ann Ackerson. From 1990 to 1996, I was director of what was then called the Rensselaer County Historical Society. And it was a time of change and, to some extent, reinvention of the institution. So you've heard a lot about how Stacy is a consummate professional, always ready to lend a helping hand, an idea, a solution. She's also someone who was and is committed to positive change and perhaps a little bit of rule breaking if it meant that the museum could have a greater impact in the community. to me, she was a steady and diplomatic colleague, despite some of my harebrained ideas and off-the-wall humor. I'd like to share two anecdotes with you tonight from the distant past. My first reminiscence occurred about 1992 when we got a call from Gretchen Soren at the Cooperstown Graduate Program, who was about to lead a group into the Audubon Ballroom in New York City prior to its demolition to salvage what they could. She needed a temporary storage solution until one or more institutions could be identified as possible recipients of these items. And without batting an eye, Stacy said, yes, we'd store whatever Gretchen brought back. For those of you who don't know, the Audubon Ballroom was the scene of Malcolm X's assassination in 1965. And a good part of what was salvaged was eventually ended up at the Schomburg Center in New York City. At the time, though, the early 1990s, there weren't many curators of local history collections, I think, who would have thrown open the doors to their collection storage areas for non-local salvaged items, but Stacy did. And my second reminiscence has to do with what I think was probably one of the museum's standout activities of the mid to late 1990s. And that was a multi-year initiative to assess the museum's collections, to identify major collecting themes that would allow us to guide us really in decision-making about what collections should be acquired for the institution, and also to plan for greater collections access. Stacy and Kathy Sheehan worked with teams of consultants over 3 years, and the result, I feel, laid the groundwork for relevant storytelling about the county's past and present. Those activities culminated in 2 exhibitions. The first was called Revision, New Ways of Looking at Old Things, which drew upon our permanent collections. And what was different about this was the exhibit labels. There were many exhibit labels layered together. And as you flipped through the labels, each label talked about the object from a different point of view. And as you went down through the pack of labels, they got more, the information got more complicated. And the last label was blank. And that was for the viewer to write in what their experiences were with that object. And that exhibition was followed by Revision, Art Works with History, where we invited 7 visual artists from the region to come into the Historical Society to interact with the collections and to create new works of art based on their interactions with the collections. And I just remember scrims hanging from the windows with images, film, an installation in the courtyard, all kinds of wonderful things. The amount of time that Stacy and Kathy spent shaping the path for all of these projects was enormous. And the result, I'd like to think, was a turning point for the collections and for the museum's mission. So thank you, Stacy. Thank you for a job well done. And I turn it over to Donna Hassler.
Thank you, Anne. A perfect segue. I took over the directorship of the Rensselaer County Historical Society in 1997. And I worked at the Historical Society until 2005. I am now the executive director of Chesterwood, the home and studio of Daniel Chester French in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. And I hope all of you will come and visit this May when we open to the public. I've been doing a little reminiscence myself and thinking about my time at RCHS, and it almost seems like a long time ago. However, in thinking about Stacy's role and the introductory party that the board and the staff and the community wanted to hold for me when I came on board in 1997, I remember saying to Stacy, you know, I'd like to put something from the collection on the postcard to announce this party. And she said, well, let me think about what might be appropriate. I know you're interested in art. Well, lo and behold, I still have the postcard. It's in my drawer next to me on my desk, and it is an image, a drawing of a study of a woman with a red feather, and it is by an amazing artist, Winslow Homer. So that was the first surprise. I think about Stacy and her role, especially behind the scenes. And I thought about, first and foremost, the Revisions Artworks with History exhibition that Anne talked about. She was diligently working behind the scenes with a number of contemporary artists to introduce those artists to Rensselaer County history and its unique collection, and how they could literally mine the museum, which they did in many different ways. I think that exhibition, which I know, Anne, you got funding from the New York State Council on the Arts, and I think that was one of the most groundbreaking exhibitions in an historical society. I wish we had published a catalog of that exhibition. The next behind the scenes task was to work on the final renovations to the Carr building, the building next door to the Hart Cluett house. And there were endless construction meetings on the design and the preservation and rehab of several floors of the building. And I think ultimately it became not only a useful space for staff and collections, but also a welcoming front door to the public from the county and beyond. Being able to open that door by yourself was really a hallmark, I think, for the Historical Society. Within the Carr building, and I hope all of you at some point have had a tour from top to bottom. On the third floor is a special storage space that Stacy worked on. And she'll have to remind me, I think we went to Winterthur, among other places, to look at their storage of primarily clothing and textiles and miscellaneous objects that were not related to the visual arts. And we came up with a very compact storage facility that is really useful both for storing objects, but also studying objects. Then there was the groundbreaking essay that she wrote on the Hart and Cluett families for the Historic Structure Report. That all took place behind the scenes, the research and the writing. And we actually published, and I'm very proud of that publication. We published that Historic Structure Report. And how many do you know that sit on a shelf somewhere in somebody's office? But we were able to raise the fund, $75,000. It was a member item from the late Senator Joseph Bruno. And we got a grant from the Furthermore Foundation to hire a designer for that publication. And now we purchased thousands of copies, and I hope they're still available at a low price. Among other behind the scenes are the objects that Stacy wrote about in focus exhibitions that were either owned or made by people from the county. And I would like to know, is the cake from the local bakery still standing in one piece? that used to be brought out every year for the Rensselaer County Garden Club, and it was in a display in the hallway, and that was a marble. I'd like to congratulate Stacy and say that she'll never be retired from her love of history and objects. Thank you. Next is Robert Engel.
Unmute. Hey, hello everybody. It's great to see you guys. Yes, I came to the Historical Society right after Donna began in 2005. I was the director and Stacy was the adult. A story I remember, and Diana, all I can remember is funny stories about Stacy. I hope that the rest of you think that they're funny too. We'll see. But Stacy, I remember one day was standing out by Cindy's desk while Bear Sheehan and I were having a pretend sword fight in my office, using presentation swords from the collection. When the shouting stopped and it went on for a while, Stacy quietly walked in wearing her white cotton gloves and disarmed the boys. No chips or scratches on the swords, so all was well, I guess. But I'm glad that she didn't scold us too badly. We were preparing for an exhibit, and this, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this gorgeous full-size marble bust of a young woman needed to be carried down the stairs in the mansion. I don't see Kathy Sheehan here, but I'm sure she's out there just bursting to jump in and tell us all who that figure was in Rensselaer County history. So Kathy, wait your turn. But all of the gang was standing around and asking if they could help, but this was clearly a job for one person. So Stacy and I were upstairs staring at this big rock, trying to figure out what to do. At Cooperstown, we learned that you don't lift a jug by its handle because that's the weakest part. Instead, you cradle the weight very carefully close to you with both hands. So, to my surprise, Stacy Pomeroy Draper said, and I quote, "Robert, I think you need to carry her by her boobs." Who here wants to volunteer to carry a 90-pound marble bust down a winding staircase with everyone just standing around howling in laughter? And Stacy was leading that laughter. I think by the time we got the marble downstairs safely, I like to say that Stacy was proud of me that day. So anyway, right back at her with that. And Stacy, go hang out on a beach somewhere. And then follow that up by hanging out in some grand cathedral in Europe somewhere. I think you're ready for that. So that's me. We're heading toward Eileen Frank.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to see these amazing faces. And all roads lead to Troy, even the virtual ones we have through Zoom. So almost exactly 21 years ago, and I can't believe this is a massive CGP reunion, but it is. I was also a Cooperstown graduate program student. And I was going on my first interview for what was going to be my postmaster's job. And I drove to Troy and I knocked on the door of the Hart Cluett house, and I met three amazing dynamic women who are all here with us tonight. Donna, Kathy, and Stacy. And we had a great interview on the landing of the second floor because the place was so discombobulated because the construction was happening at 57 and offices were turned upside down. The library was operating out of the toy room in the basement of the Hart Cluett house. And you would think that a grad student might say, this is not where I necessarily want to go to work. Are they going to be able to pull this off, this dream? But these three women had such passion for the museum industry. Their love for history was inspiring, and their vision for what RCHS could become was enthralling. And so when Donna offered me the position, I jumped at the opportunity to join this amazing group and had the great privilege to work there as director of programs from 2001 to 2005. And then I returned as executive director from 2011 to 2015. Stacy Pomeroy Draper is the humble mentor that everyone wants in their life. She provides guidance when you don't even realize that you are getting it. She provides wisdom on a daily basis. She provides, and I'm so glad Michael mentioned it, her compassion and her way that she approaches other people, I think inspires us all to be better when it comes to dealing with each other and humanity. And I know that my time at Rensselaer County Historical Society, so greatly influenced by being able to work with Stacy and Kathy and everyone else that I worked with there over the years, has only fueled my tremendous career that I've had working in museums. And so I think we all just applaud Stacy for her 43 years at the organization. And the other thing that she taught me is to make sure that when you are dealing with community members and you don't want them necessarily to get away with things that they want to get away, to make sure that they know that you're coming into the room by wearing very loud keys, which she always did at the Green Show, so that the garden club members knew she was walking around the house in case they had different ideas of where to put fresh flowers. And so it's just a subtle way of how Stacy made sure her presence was known at all times. It was an absolute pleasure working with you, Stacy. I wish you all the best, and l'chaim to your retirement. I believe Karen is next.
Thank you, Eileen. Yes, my name is Karen Cressback-Lenz, for those of you who haven't met me, and I was executive director following Eileen from 2015 until about 11 months ago when I retired. And I am absolutely honored to be able to be here tonight to celebrate Stacy's storied career and her retirement. I will say that Stacy has done, I think, many enumerated projects and duties that have been listed here this evening, but she did everything in my tenure there, and even when I was a member in the 4 previous years when we first moved to Troy, from seeing her tour grade schoolers down the street and trying to engage 7-year-olds in history and holding up placards and keeping their attention to taking very scholarly people from the Walpole Society of Architects, learned architects, through the Hart Cluett House. So I saw her do those many things with great aplomb. Also, she worked with everyone from undergraduates and even high school students sometimes to curators from the Smithsonian for the recent collaborative exhibit that we did, where her work and how she integrated the history of Rensselaer County and the objects of the collection with the Smithsonian on Main Street, Museum on Main Street exhibit. And her work was put out as an example as to what the Smithsonian would like to see done with more small museums across the country. So kudos to her for something she would never tell you, but all of us know the email that came from the curators at the Smithsonian about her and her work. One awesome thing about Stacy is that nothing was ever too small for her to do. If we had a deck party to raise money and to build community, she could be in the kitchen going from talking to someone about an object in the exhibit and a major donor in the next minute to cutting the cheese and washing platters and then coming right back out and looking completely unflustered. And someone had said she's very steady. And she touched many lives because of that, because of the ways in which she handled herself, the professionalism, the kindness, the studiousness. There were times when I wanted to help. I was brought in to kind of be a change agent. I wanted to move things forward more quickly. And she stood her ground. And we never anything but professional. And somehow we would find common ground where we could move the organization forward together. And she was very good at helping everyone understand why something might be a goal, but other things, there were reasons why there was a process and why we had to maintain certain threads throughout time. Also, I will say for two curious things, I was asked to say something curious or something humorous. There are two ways in which Stacy not only touched lives of other people, but anyone who worked on the Green Show and anyone who ever worked on staff or volunteered at the Green Show will know. None of us can ever look at glitter in the same way again. Stacy has a pathological loathing of glitter. As she would say, glitter is forever. It is forever on the paintings. It is forever in the carpet. It is forever on those precious white gloves that you touch dear objects with. I thought of you often this Christmas, Stacy, walking down, albeit retired 10 months by then, walking down Christmas aisles. I could hear her in my head. No, don't give that ornament to somebody. They don't want that glitter in their house. And I know some of us will think of that forever. The other is that when I first came, probably the best lesson I learned, and I pass it on to my kids now as they are coming into positions of leadership. She said, if I wanted a happy staff and especially a happy curator at all times, there needed to be chocolate available. So my daughter, who now works at UB, in honor of you, Stacy, keeps chocolate on her desk for all the postdocs and grad students that work with her. And I made sure to always keep that going. So in your honor, Stacy, at some point I will stop by your house, and when you just have a little bag of chocolate delivered to your front door, you know it's from me wanting you to enjoy your retirement, whether you're writing the book you've longed to write or on that beach. Congratulations. And next, I turn it over to Chris Eastman. Christopher.
Thanks, Karen. That was so nice. And Eileen, I almost jumped the gun because everybody's remarks have been so wonderful and thoughtful. I'm Chris Eastman, and I'm on the board. And I first started spending time at the Historical Society when Eileen was the program director. And I've known Stacy, though not terribly well, for most of the last 2 decades. And I've always respected her for her great knowledge and professionalism, from gallery talks and other lectures and walking tours. 2 in particular come to mind that changed how I look at Troy, the one on the Great Fire and the Ironwork tour. And I've always thought of Stacy as pretty serious, but only last month I saw another side to her. I was among the docents preparing to give tours for the Green Show. And Stacy was pretty punchy in the first run through. So something I'd never seen of her before. And unfortunately, because I was so nervous about getting ready to give these tours and step into the shoes of Kathy and Stacy and give a tour of the Hart Cluett Mansion, I can't remember some of the funny things she said, but I told everyone who would listen that I was nervous about giving my tour. And after our second run through, Stacy was, I think, exhausted at that point. I asked her, with all this information, with all these pages of information about the house, what was really important to be telling people in each room? Because she'd bring us in and say, this is the parlor, and these are the 12 days of Christmas, and here's the reception room and the main hall and the staircase. And I said, with all this information, what's really important for me to be telling people? Should I be telling people about the Hudson River School paintings, the Galusha furniture? And she said, they're just interested in the decorations. They won't be focused on you. You'll be fine. And I was a little surprised to hear her say that. And then, of course, I asked her about the original configuration, mostly from my own curiosity of the back of the mansion, the back rooms of the mansion. And she kind of sprung to life and told me in detail. But then a couple weeks later, right before the Greens show, maybe to calm myself down, I told Kathy I was pretty nervous, and Kathy said, "Oh, people are going to be looking at the decorations. They're not going to worry about you." To which I responded, "Even Stacy said that." And Sam came walking through and said, "Even Stacy." And then I realized, as if I didn't think Stacy was capable of making a quip like that, which of course was the case. And then I realized maybe part of the reason I was nervous and I knew was because I didn't want to let Stacy down. I knew that she'd be following along on the tour and listening. And she complimented my first tour, which Karen was on, because she's nice, but the second one I gave was much better. I hope she's available to train me and others to give a couple of those walking tours around Troy. Stacy has so much to offer us, and I hope she continues to be a big part of our community. Congratulations, Stacy. And Margaret's story, I think, is next.
Thank you, Chris. I made a list of words that I associate with Stacy. One, she's gracious. She's a guardian. She's knowledgeable. She's a teacher and a student. She's dedicated, and she has great dignity. And I thought, well, that pretty much, but it didn't take quite 2 minutes. So some 20 years ago when I retired, I answered a call for volunteers by the Historical Society. I attended a several-week docent training with Stacy and Kathy. To finish the training, we had to do a tour of the house with either Stacy or Kathy. I was hoping I would do mine with Kathy, but I drew Stacy, and I'm telling you, I studied and I studied. I was so scared of Stacy and that I would flunk. I didn't flunk, and that began my long career here. I came to know Stacy not as scary, but as a guardian of our collections and its place in our community. She has valued the contribution of volunteers to this organization. I was president of the board during one of her terms as acting director. She did not like that job. She didn't relish it, but she handled it with grace and dignity. And we hit some really rough spots, but we made it through. And Stacy, I wish you well. May you find retirement relaxing, rewarding, and fun. And I believe Susan is next.
Hi, I'm Susan Dodgemont, and I did not go to Cooperstown graduate program. So I guess I'm the token archivist here. But Stacy, she was one of the first people I ever met when I first moved to Albany over 20 years ago, when I had the position of being the regional archivist for this region. And she was on my advisory committee. She had been on the advisory committee well before I had this position. And I was new to the region. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know the history of the region, didn't know anything. And she really introduced me to all sorts of archivists, historians, and others that helped me learn not just about Rensselaer County, but about the whole 10-county capital district. And I see some of you that I knew through that here. Just her knowledge is of the whole region is amazing. She's always very, as all of you have said, she's always been very patient, kind, and knowledgeable. She would answer any question that I would have. But actually, my favorite memory, and I don't even know if you remember this, Stacy, but my favorite memory of Stacy is going up with her to her beloved Camp Chingachgook, and we were supposed to be looking at the archives, but the director there like was like, so I had never been there before, and he so wanted to show off the camp that he put us on the back of this golf cart and he drove us all over the camp, like up and down, here and there. We were bumping along in this golf cart, and I don't think we actually ever, I think we saw the archives for like 5 minutes. But that was just, it was so much fun, and I know that she helped to get that archives more established up there, and I wish you all the luck in your retirement, Stacy, and obviously many of us are going to miss you, but we really value all that you have given to the historical community throughout the whole Capital District. And I think Kathy Sheehan is next.
All right. Well, before I talk about Stacy, Robert Engel, it was Julia Taylor Payne that you dragged down the stairs by her boobs. So, just so we got that straight. Stacy's right here to the right of me, and I could see her go on about the 35 years we spent together. And half my brain went out the door with it. But I'm not going to go down that way, because you will all the wonderful things you have said. Her and I have been together through all this for all these many years. But I have to tell you a funny story. We have done some really crazy things, holding up the Galusha bookcases while, you know, hanging on to chandeliers till Stacy's husband could come down and, you know, fix it. Standing out in water in a thunderstorm with you know, doing that, and coming, I think that the ultimate one was the fire that we had at the back of the alley on the opening of this building after the, you know, $3 million renovation that was going on during Donna Hassler's tenure, and neither one of us had our bras on, and had to have our husbands come down with clothes at 8 o'clock because we'd been sitting here all night long with fans on. But one of my favorite ones, and it really speaks to, of course, the amazing collections that Stacy found and nurtured with people through the years, and it was the Asa Douglas collection, who was one of the first doctors from Stephentown, and his great something grandson. They finally decided to give us this collection, and so Stacy and I got a truck, you know, because that's what we did. We rented a budget truck and we went up to Dartmouth, New Hampshire, and proceeded to pick up this wonderful collection. Now at the time, and Stacy of course still looks amazing, I took down a few pounds again, but we were both doing Weight Watchers, and so we decided we were going to be really good. And so we picked up the collection, we put everything in the truck, and now we got to, you know, make the 3-hour drive back to Troy. And so Stacy goes, I'm going to make us a great snack. So she has this all laid on her lap, and we had our little baby bell cheese and our fruit and everything. And I'm driving the truck, and we're merrily going down the road, and she's got this all fixed up. It was amazing. And all once I look in the rearview mirror and I hear these sirens going, and we are pulled over by the New Hampshire State Police Department. And they proceeded to open the door and see all of these things that she had laid out on her lap. And he just looked at it, it's like, who are these two crazy women in this 14, 15 foot, you know, U-Haul? Well, as it turned out, I didn't tell you what the date of that was. It was about 3 months after 9/11, when anybody that was renting U-Hauls was being stopped. But we did end up, they went through the entire truck. They wanted to know who we were, what we were doing, what was going on, and we had to produce all the paperwork and the whole 9 yards. And then Stacy, and because she always is so gracious, asked him if he would like a snack. And I think he got the baby bell cheese. I think he took the baby. That is just, you know, one of the many things that this woman who I love to my right here has done so many things. And another gentleman who I also love, and as Diana mentioned, we really did have an awful lot of fun all those mornings for years, it felt like, going through the photographs for our collection. And so I want to bring Doug Bucher up to the podium, because I have something for, we have something for him from the board and staff. Come on up, Doug.
Oh, if I can make it.
This is for Doug. Let me hold it up so everybody can see it. You'll see this is the doorway. This was done by artist and sculptor Patrick Piggott, who is also on our board. Beautiful, made this beautiful plaque for Doug, and I'm just going to read it. I have to take my glasses up here. It says, to Doug Bucher, for a lifetime of dedication and commitment to preserving history in our community. Thank you from the board of directors, staff, and volunteers of the Hart Cluett Museum, January 2022. You have left an indelible mark, and Douglas, you have. And so this is, we really, on all of our behalf, we would love to present this to you.
Now you've got me all flustered.
Up to you.
I don't remember what I was going to say. Thank you. What a surprise. Did you know that, Stacy?
I did not know.
I'm Doug Bucher, as we all know now. And I want to say it was 1978, some 43 years ago, that I first met Stacy. And of all places, it was an historic house museum. Naturally, where else would we meet? It was Cherry Hill in Albany, and I was working on a historic study of the house for my firm. And Stacy had recently graduated from Cooperstown and was there, I think, as an intern. And we immediately hit it off. We became good friends. And I realized that, you know, she was going to be looking for a position. And I suggested that she talk to Breffney Walsh at the Rensselaer County Historical Society. I had recently moved out of the apartment in that building, had been involved there for several years before that, and very familiar with it. And she met with Breffney, and of course, the rest is history. And what a history. What was I going to say? It was pretty amazing, all of the things that were accomplished from that point on. The move from one building, the Hart Cluett House, where everything was crammed in, the library was in a basement, a small room in the basement, to the renovation of the Carr building and the expansion of the organization, to the discovery of the Hart papers and the months and months that Stacy spent going through those trunks of papers, pulling out all the information about the family that ultimately led to the creation of the book on the Marble House, which tells the story of the family and the house and of Troy through the 19th century. So Stacy has been part of this incredible growth of this organization from small local historical society to an organization that is recognized throughout the state and I think throughout the country for its expertise and its professionalism. I think one of the things that I'm really going to miss the most with Stacy are these almost daily, if weekly, daily phone calls back in the primitive days, more recently emails, alerting me to a leaking roof, a furnace that's failed, something horrible that's happened, but on the positive side, also some exciting new thing that was going to be coming into the collection. Some new information that she discovered she knew I'd be interested in. So I really got to look forward to those communications. And actually the last one that affected the collection was a month or so ago when she found out that there was a chair coming up for auction in Saratoga that was designed by Elijah Galusha, Troy's great cabinet maker. It was actually stamped with his name. And it was the first time that a piece of furniture could be identified with his name on it. And needless to say, we were both very excited about that and ended up acquiring it for the collection. I'm really going to miss those phone calls. I'm hoping Sam will do the same thing, or Kathy, because I got to really sort of count on having those communications weekly from Stacy. So I want to say, just in closing, thank you, Stacy, for all the wonderful things you've done for this organization over the years. And really thank you for including me in so much that's happened here. Really going to miss you, but I'm sure we'll see each other frequently and keep making phone calls, even if it's not about the collection. Thank you.
So next up is the woman of the hour herself, but I also have a small gift for her. Another wonderful plaque designed by our own Patrick Piggott, who wonderfully created this gorgeous plaque. It says, Stacy Pomeroy Draper, for a lifetime of service dedicated to recognizing every face and every story in our community. Thank you from the Board of Directors, staff, and volunteers of the Hart Cluett Museum. January 2022, you've left an indelible mark. So another one is wonderful. I'll turn it over to Stacy.
Thank you, Star, and thank you, everyone. Wow. I'm almost speechless, but since I wrote down some comments, you don't get away scot-free. I really am blown away by everybody's kind words and all the memories and reminiscences and tall tales that some people have told. I thank you so much. It isn't often that we get to glimpse the impact we have on other people, and I really am overwhelmed by all of this. And a big thank you to everyone who has organized this party in my honor and worked behind the scenes to bring us all together tonight. You know who you are, and you have my special thanks as well. When I got to RCHS in September of 1978, as you've heard, fresh out of graduate school, Cooperstown Graduate School, and an internship at historic Cherry Hill. And it is Doug's fault that I'm here pretty much for learning about the job here. I will say that Breffney and Sandy Risen, who was the administrative assistant at the time, told me I got the job because I was taller than anybody else and could reach the top of the bulletin board. I didn't quite believe them, but I was taller than either one of them. I had no idea then that I would be putting down deep roots into Troy and Rensselaer County's history soil, as we would say, for the next 4 decades. As Ken Crow captured so nicely in his recent Times Union article about my retirement, I also met and married my late husband, Steve. We had our daughter, Katie, who is here tonight, who literally grew up at the museum, and I have pictures with Santa Claus from many green shows to prove it, and with the families of other staff members and volunteers who really have become part of our family as well. It's been an honor to work with the many people who've made this organization what it is today. And I've been mentored and supported in my own efforts by, I think my count is correct, 9 directors, numerous board presidents, some who you've heard from this evening, and many other colleagues and museum members and loyal volunteers who have again spoken up this evening in my honor. I really appreciate that. I have learned far more than I was ever able to impart about Rensselaer County's rich, diverse, and important history from the researchers and visitors who often shared their own stories with us. This includes many of the Hart members, Hart family and Cluett family members who've shared their own history with us as we try to preserve the Hart Cluett house, which is, as you know, one of my favorite objects in the collection. This has always been a team effort, and I think that's been borne out by the comments tonight, with a vigorous exchange of viewpoints and knowledge, and the primary goal, as board member Sharon Robinson so clearly stated a number of years ago, to recognize every face and every story and everything that we do. Piquing the curiosity of students or visitors to learn more about their own or someone else's history through an interaction at a program or on a history walk, And learning something from them that I didn't know or hadn't considered is the essence of what all of us do here. I'll always be thankful that I've had the opportunity to be part of this institution and this mission. Our mission is even more important today as our world is in need of safe places to recognize, learn about, discuss, and better understand and value the diverse experiences and many voices of our shared communities. As I think back over the long years I've spent here, and they've gone by in a flash, I have to say, it's the faces of people that I have interacted with that come to mind most frequently. Many of them have appeared on this Zoom call tonight, but some of the faces are people long gone, preserved for us today in paint or photographic images and the objects that they left behind. Betsy Hart, for instance, is one of my most favorite people in the world, and she's constantly looking over my shoulder. That isn't as weird as it sounds. For those of you who get into history research, some of them are people I've worked with for so many years and who I miss seeing almost every day at this point. In some ways, the faces that will stick with me most are those of the young students and interns who have been inspired by reading a firsthand account of an historical event, whether great or mundane, finding similarities of experience in the words of someone their own age, perhaps, but separated by more than a century and a half or more, or of the researchers who come in and whose faces light up when they see the signature or the face of a relative of theirs for the first time that they never thought they'd find, but they finally did in a document or image in our collections. Those connections and experiences are life-changing, as I know from my very own experience. Just so you know, I'm not going very far, and sooner or later I'm going to turn up here again to finish a few projects that somehow didn't get accomplished while I was here. You know what those are, I'm sure, and assist in any way I can in my retirement to further the impact of the Hart Cluett Museum as it moved towards its own 100th birthday in a few years. Don't forget, those anniversaries do keep coming. I know I'm leaving this wonderful place in very good hands, and I look forward to seeing the museum's continued growth and evolution as times change and perspectives evolve to be even more inclusive and more focused on the recent past and tying that past to the present to make meaningful connections for all those we serve. I encourage all of you to take part in this effort as well and to continue to support what people often call a hidden gem in our community, a gem that is making itself better known and better understood in these changing times through the hard work, guidance, and insight of many of you here tonight and many more outside these walls. So I'm not going to say goodbye. I'll say see you soon and often, either virtually or hopefully in person. And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart and look forward to our continued relationships and shared efforts. Thanks so much for this evening. It's just been amazing. And I guess I turn it over to Star again. Thank you.
I was so excited about getting to the part of hearing what Stacy had to say that I neglected to read some comments from Leslie Chu from the Troy Savings Bank Foundation. So I just want to really quickly mention those before I turn it over to Beth Schroeder, one of our board members. So Leslie had sent me this statement saying, Stacy Pomeroy Draper is the kind of person who gets excited about 140-year-old banking records, and that is why I like her so much. Stacy's curiosity about bank records doesn't come from an interest in accounting or bookkeeping, because she would be the first to tell you that bookkeeping records are more than a little dry to read. Instead, Stacy is interested in things like old banking records because they tell us about the lives of the people who made those transactions. About 15 years ago, I got to see Stacy's eyes gleam as she sorted through hundreds of volumes of early Troy Savings Bank records. She sat surrounded by dusty leather-bound books that weighed about 5 pounds each. The books contained late 19th century Board of Trustees minutes, customers' deposits and withdrawal slips, and merchants' loan documents. The people who made those transactions were long gone, but these bank books were history gold nuggets about their lives in the 1880s and 1890s. Stacy was a woman on a mission. To my untrained eye, those bound volumes all looked the same. Stacy knew where the treasure was to be found, and she pieced together the early stories of the bank's first customers, wealthy landowners and industrialists, iron workers and freed slaves alike, and how they lived. I have been fortunate to work with Stacy on several projects since then, and she impressed me every time. We shouldn't be fooled by her genteel and polished exterior. This woman has history-finding superpowers. She has brought the history of Rensselaer County to life for all of us, and she deserves our gratitude. I hope that tonight we will raise a glass to Stacy and recognize the extraordinary gifts of curiosity, intelligence, and perseverance that she has shared with us over the years. Thank you, Stacy. That was lovely. So Beth, I'm going to turn it over to Beth Schroeder. Is Beth?
Yep, I'm here. I'm here. All right, I'm here actually.
Muted,
all
Beth.
right. Are you ready? Okay, you ready? I'm here as Mark Shipley, who's the current board chair. He had some family business come up, so he asked me to speak in his stead. So on behalf of the current board of directors and all the past board directors who are here, Stacy, thank you so much. And we're not quite done with you yet. To commemorate your 43-year tenure at the museum and to commemorate your partnership, friendship, criminal past, whatever it is, with Doug Bucher, we're announcing the creation of the Draper Bucher Curatorial Fund. And we're asking for people to contribute whatever they'd like to in your honor. Doug asked that the name be Draper Bucher in his characteristic way. So if anyone would like to contribute to the fund from now on, we're going to grow this fund and commemorate you as long as the museum is around, Stacy and Doug. Thank you so much. You can make a gift through, you can make a pledge right now through the chat button. You can go online, you can send in a check, whatever you want to do to honor both Stacy and you, Doug. We're here because of you. Thank you.
I really, that is amazing. And I'm just always looking for money for new collection pieces. So you know that that's a good thing. The collection has to grow. It has to expand. And some of our most important objects, for instance, the Peter Baltimore portrait that came in to the collection about four years ago now, because of a Hands Up campaign. And we brought Peter home, and it is one of the most important things in our collection, a portrait of a young, personable Black man who was just an amazing force within the community for many years, whose son was the first Black graduate of RPI, and who had, the whole family had an impact. So the money does go towards very good things, and I'm just thrilled that that is a thing that will happen even more now. Thank you very much.
And it's a rare museum that says we have more than enough money.
So or can you mute? Our last item of the evening will be a brief video featuring our favorite person, Stacy, and I hope you enjoy it. And I also just want to say I'm thrilled that Samantha Mahosky has agreed to serve as our next curator. She is amazingly talented and creative and fun, and I'm certain she's going to do a wonderful job. And having worked under the tutelage of Stacy for several years, I couldn't think of a better person to carry that mission forward. So the future looks bright for us. And Sam, you can start the video and we will see all of you again. Bye-bye.
We are looking at
today the window project that is part of a major effort to preserve this building over time. The windows, of course, are really a critical element in the building envelope, which is the sort of exterior of the building, including the roof and foundation. But the windows are really critical in keeping out the weather, and they have had some restoration in places. For instance, the facade here, when we cleaned the stone back in 2005, the windows were also restored on the front. But that was a while ago now, and any kind of wood, of course, is subject to the weather and time. And so these windows, while they look okay, they are the best in the building. We have over 51 windows to take care of. As you look at the house, the public sees the front primarily, but also we'll go inside in a minute and take a look at the way they are from the inside. They are very much a part of the house's interior and an important survival in many ways. They've not been changed over time. So we're standing in the connecting link between our museum building and the Hart Cluett house in another set of windows which are in good shape. But one of the things that we're very excited about for this project is it will really add to the impact that this museum can have as an economic driver in the community. As a National Register historic site, this is a really important structure to maintain and preserve, and we look forward to being able to use it in new and exciting ways in the future as programs evolve, as technology allows us to do things that we may not have been able to do before. And all of that builds on a long history and tradition of this museum and this organization being an important part of the community.